In this lesson, we're going to be looking at conditional statements within PHP, more specifically the if-else statement. So we'll begin by opening up our PHP tags, as usual. So we'll just begin with our opening tags and closing tags. Okay, so first of all, let's assume that we have a variable created. And the variable is called hour. Now we could use the date function to determine what the current hour of the day is, but just for the sake of the moment I'm going to say that the hour is 15. Okay, in other words, 3 in the afternoon. So the hour is 15. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have an echo statement that the user sees when they view this web page that's basically going to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Now if the hour were 15, we would expect it to say good afternoon. So the way we write this in a conditional statement is we begin with if. So open bracket if, and then we're going to say the hour. So if the hour is less than 12, so we're using the less than sign. So if the hour is less than 12, and then we close off our bracket, open a curly brace, a couple of lines to close off our curly brace. Then we would say if the hour is less than 12, echo, and then we say good morning. Simple as that. But of course our hour is 15, so it's not going to be less than 12. Before we continue, I'm just going to save this page and just show you what will happen in a browser. Refresh the page, nothing. But we wouldn't expect to see anything. We've said if the hour is less than 12, but it's 15. So then we can put an else on here. So after our final curly brace, we just add the word else, and then we open another curly brace, a couple of lines, close it. And in the else statement, we would say echo, and then we would say good afternoon. So let's just see if that works, then we'll come back to it and look at it in a bit more detail. So save that page, flick over, and it says good afternoon. Okay. So what it's doing is it's evaluating this statement. So if the hour is less than 12, say good morning, which it's not. So for everything else, say good afternoon. Okay, so that's a simple switch as if you want one statement or another. But of course in our situation we have 3 criteria. We want to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. So we basically need to amend this middle else statement. Instead of just saying, well, if it's less than 12 do this, but for everything else do that, we're going to say if it's less than 12 say good morning, else if, and this is one word, and then we need to put our condition in brackets like we did in our initial if statement line. So else if hour is, we're going to say greater than 12, and then we have to use the and, we'll look at this in a bit more detail in just a moment, and hour is less than, we'll go for say 18, so 6 PM in the evening. So we're saying if it's between 12 and 18. And then finally we'd put our original final else at the end, where we would say else good evening. Okay, so first thing it's doing is saying is the hour less than 12? Well, of course in our situation it's not. So else, if it's greater than 12 and less than 18, then we say good afternoon. Everything else will say good evening. So we should expect it to say good afternoon. So let's just save that page. We'll go over to our demo and refresh, and we've got good afternoon, which is what we would expect. Okay, now if I were to change the hour to say 19, in this situation we would expect it to say good evening, because it's saying is it less than 12, which is not. So it goes to the next statement. Is it greater than 12 and less than 18? No, it's not. So let's go to our final statement. We'll save that and run it. We should see good evening, which we do. Okay, so that's how you would do a basic if statement. These are called conditional statements. Okay, so let's give you another example. Let's say for instance you had a user system where different people who log in have different levels of access. Okay, and we would once again assume that this is being a variable that's being generated by data that's stored in a database, but just for the sake of this we're going to say create a variable called access level, and in this we're actually going to put a string So access level equals admin. Okay, this admin could be, for example, user, it could be admin, it could be read only, any kind of thing like that. All right. Now let's say, for instance, we want to have in our menu bar a link that would allow someone who has access at an admin level, allow them to see a link that would maybe link off to a login page to administer the system. Alright, so what we could do, for example, we're in PHP at the moment. I'm just going to break out. We could use a standard a link, so we an href, so we could say a href equals, and then this could be linked to, say, login.php, and we'll close that off and we'll say login. Okay, so at the moment we'll just save that page and run it, and we just have our login link, okay, which everybody sees. But what we're going to do is we're going to say only show this if the access level is admin. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this in a bit of PHP. Now, of course, I don't need to rewrite or reopen a PHP tag, but I just want to show you this in its segments. So we can say if, and then we open our bracket. We say access level. So if access level equals, and we use our double equals. So if it equals admin, okay, close our bracket, open the curly brace, and now we want to break out of our PHP. So we can say if it's admin, show the link, and then we need to obviously put our final curly brace. So we open our PHP tag, curly brace, and then close our PHP tag as well. So it's saying if the access level is admin, show this link, and then there's our final brace. So save that page, once again refresh it, and we do see it. But of course, let's say that the access level for this page was just user. Someone logged in and that's the level they have. We flick over and of course they wouldn't see it. Okay, so that's a conditional statement, and once again, if we just flip back and view the page source on this, you don't see anything because it's all wrapped within PHP. It's run on the server side before the page is served up. Okay, we could, for instance, within this, let's just chop all that out, and we'll come back up into our main PHP section here. So access level is user. So we can say if, open our bracket, access level equals user. Okay, then we could say, for example, echo you cannot log in to make changes. Okay, else if access level equals admin, same as before, wrapped in brackets and curly braces, we would say echo click here to log in, and of course we would put a link around the click here. So for example, we say a href equals, and then we could close that off here. So we can put HTML within that echo line. Alright, so save that page, we'll run it, and we should expect to see just this line here, which it does. You cannot log in to make changes. But if we change our access level here to admin, save and refresh, it says click here to log in. Alright, so that's a conditional statement. And of course, if the access level is something completely different, if it's something completely random, so it's not user and it's not admin, we should see nothing. So refresh the page and we see nothing. Which we could, if we wanted to, put on the end of here. For everything else, we could just say echo you don't appear to have logged in. So we should see this final line because of the fact that we've got a random login there. Okay, you don't appear to have logged in. So just a note on the comparisons here. Earlier on we looked at the and in this case we're looking at the equals. So let's just clear this out. If you're saying in a conditional statement that something has to be like this, or like this, or something has to be this and this, there's various ways you can do that. So for example, if we had a variable called num1 equals 1, okay, and we have a variable called num2 equals 2, okay. If we wanted to compare these two to see if they're the same, we would say if num1 equals num2. Okay, so let's just put this in a if statement. We would say echo they match. So what this is saying is if num1 equals num2, but if we were to change that to a single equals, then PHP thinks you're trying to set a value. So in the same way we've done up here, we're using a single equal to assign the value of 1 to the variable called num1. Okay, single equal assigns a value, whereas when you're using a comparison you have to use a double equals. So we're saying if num1 equals num2. In other words, if number 1 equals number 2. Alright, so that's how you'd use an equal sign. Now, if you wanted to say an and, so let's say for instance you wanted to say if num1 equals 1, okay, but we also want to say and number 2 equals 1, we would then use a double ampersand. So we would say and num2 equals 1. Alright, so if num1 variable equals 1 and num2 variable equals 1, which it doesn't at the moment, equals 2, then we would say they match. Alright, else we would echo they don't match. Okay, so let's just see that, and we'll run that, and we should see this line here, they don't match, because of course num1 and num2 are different at the moment. They both equal 1 and 2 respectively. So we'll run that page, they don't match. If I were to change num2's variable to be 1, so now it's saying if num1 equals 1 and num2 equals 1, then say they match, which of course they will now, so we'll resave, refresh, and they match. Alright, so that's using the and, that's using the equals. There is one more function we can use, which is the or. So if we were to say for instance if num1 variable equals 1 or num2 equals 1, what we would put in here are two pipes. Okay, so if num1 equals 1, which it does, or num2 equals 1, then we could say echo one of the variables is 1. Okay, I'm going to take out this else just to give you an example of what this does. So at the moment they're both set to 1. Alright, so we resave that, refresh, one of the variables is 1. But of course if I change num2 to be 50, then we should still see the same line, because it's saying if num1 variable is 1 or num2 variable equals 1. So at the moment num1 is equal to 1, so it's going to show this. Alright, so one of the variables is 1. So that's the basics of conditional statements within PHP. You're going to use the syntax of if, else, or else if need be. So just think of it as if, and then you have a condition in brackets with a curly brace. Then you could have else if with a condition, open the curly brace, and then you could also have an else with a curly brace. Okay, so that's a three-stage conditional statement. More often than not, you're just going to have it as an if statement. A useful feature for this, something that I use quite a lot, is if I've got quite a large bit of code that I just want to turn off temporarily, I use the simple example of this. So let's say for instance I'm just going to put some dummy text in here. Let's assume that this is lines of code, okay, but I only want to test it. I want to turn it off for the moment. So what I would do is I would put an if statement, say if 1 equals 2. Alright, then show this and close it off. Now of course, like I say, that's all actual just gobbledygook at the moment. That's not real code, so I'm just going to comment that there so it doesn't do anything. But I would use this line here, if 1 equals 2, because of course this is the value 1, this is the value 2. These aren't looking at variables, they're looking at actual numbers. So if 1 equals 2, which it doesn't, then show this code. So I know that by using that simple conditional statement, it's going to block out a large chunk of code if I want to disable it just to do some bug testing, or if it's a bit of work in testing or development. Okay, simple way to block out a certain section of code. Okay, so that's the basics of conditional statements within PHP, looking at primarily the if statement and a couple of useful little features for it there. Hope you enjoyed that. See you in the next tute.